Getting provision line cycles, calculation line interference is speed, tracking calculations and ramification centers. Understand the track communication setting when it comes to all calculations. Directing lines of communications all of the panels. High calculation modifies your system to attractions. So we understand how to more lines of communications, mind of navigation. Let's centralize your units in all levels of programs. Directing lines of communication settings in all calculation. So it's important to understand how to really set communication your settings. Okay. Especially when you come into the inner links, inner platforms, inner lines into inner line connections, all levels of space, inner space, outer space, inner links, outer links, inner sync, outer sync. So in provision, the inner child has to really recognize the mind that navigates the system locations to calculations to its time, which is its heart. So it's all in chronological order. Mind, position, location, heart, the soul, and the body. The body is a full cycle of communications, information line connections of a graph. So it's a structured design, but it's not position, locations, and setting a line of communication. So what that means is light, shades, and shadows. To understand that applications and understanding your lacing lines of a TV receptor calculation stream. You ever watch a TV station and has different lines of communication, right? Too many different TV reception line screens. Well, that's what it is. It's rebalancing your system locations. The species lines into 24,000 line connections, which moon service location system, and 300,000 lines of speed in seconds. 300,000 lines of speed, okay, through your moon. It's going through back force line communications in 1949 stream. Directing line set locations at team line centers and high position track lines is into all calculations to 1 million seconds. Okay? Knowing the acceleration of your moon lines sets positions to its provision. Your cycle's communication and inference high position to its operation. The psychosis locations to your interception location of channels or anything in that set locations. Put settings in your communication settings. Back into the kaleidoscope communication, looking in position directions through your astral projections. Really understand the center communication that opens all cycles of your communication setting, right? Understand all levels of travel recognition. Okay. So today in class, we're going to go through all calculation lines of formulas equation, all through number sequence. All your moons are set position of provisions, setting track lines in high memory. Memory can position track calculation high positional levels. Cerebral cortex calculation high settings. All right. Setting track lines in high setting positions, operation surface. Getting direct signal in set locations. All right. So we platitude line centers, high position locations, 24,000 line streams, 3 zeros in set locations, bracket correlations. Okay. Sets position locations and 2 bracket line settings, high calculation, high interference, high position location, all levels. 1 million track line connections, equal line position locations, Merkaba up and Merkaba down, and center line communication. Direct communication lines settings, high travel calculation stream locations. Okay. Now direct lines, equal line position locations, all levels. Sets track lines, calculation line interference, also in 3 zeros. The set travel communications of bracket calculation. So 0 travels lines to outline signal. See, it's outline communications, right? So that's decimal point 0.111 and position of all 4 position travel lines. 4 generation streams of set location. Okay. Generation stream lines calculation line center is a 0 operation surface. Triangulates and repositions programs allocation of travel lines. Got calculation high interference of travel calculation line centers, a point system calculation line interference, high position location of pyramids. Pyramids sets line track lines. Now we just have position of travel calculation lines and position of travel. Okay. Direct calculation line settings, cross line symbols. Direct line communications to high position programs. So into narration, calculation high interference and notification centers, travel calculation of point systems, and 3 line calculation setting the travel calculation. Direct communication line interference and 24,000 line set location of the moon. Moon sets line triangulation and reset position of programs. All position travel lines, all calculation setting and formation. Okay, double equation. Okay, so going through a metric screen is all about understanding the set location line screens and set location operation surface. Point system of 0 tracks. So we have 1 0 line position location, 101, right? Track location line settings. Remember, we're going through numbers. Number sequence location of travel lines. How a number line communication comes into 1 to 5. See the 5? See, that's what it is. 1 indicates 5. Okay? Sets position location of 6. Tracks communication line centers high position locations of 9 and 6 location. Right? Sets position location line centers high calculation strain. Directs communication line centers high position of travel. 6 and 9. 6 position of point systems, 9 set location. All 3 metric meters and miles in the line center line position of programs and all calculation lines of 0 gravity set location. Now, directing lines of communication to the panels sets lines of calculation. Okay? Sets lines of communication lines of dimensional doors and pi direction of 3 lines calculation stream location of high setting. Sets position of travel calculation height interference. Direct communication to metric screens and set the location of sun and the moon and track location. Done by equation. Particle system and travel calculation lines are point systems. All levels of 0 ground lines of operation. Okay? Done by equation. All right, so the metric scales are done. Now we balance position of streamlines. Now it's going to get complicated, guys, because you have to understand how the box line in the triangulation resets position of programs. To understand position location calculations, right? Box, triangle, triangle, box, and set locations. 3 line settings, right? Into a half pipe sets locations. There's the moon. See it? Moon track location. There it is. Done. That's the moon. Then the moon surface location line center. Sun is in track locations in a high set position of travel. Okay? Now, direct lines of communication is a panel communication of reversing line rotation center. That's what your moon is doing. Sets position travel calculation is center calculation. Now, calculation line interference sets lines of communication setting and travel position of operation. Direct calculation line interference and Merkabah tesseract in a tetraregion line screen. See it? Setting position line calculation line centers high positions operation service. Intelligence communication. There it is. See intelligence? You see it? Right? Sets position location line centers. There it is. So in that line center high position location, we go into platforms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in track locations. Direct lines of communication setting all levels of the sun and the moon. Opens all signals, opens all communication setting, platitude divided location near pyramids, and set location line centers of what's above and what's below in set location. Done by equation. All right. So the moon surface sets position of time sequence. Time calculation lines of time zone. So time zone line center and high interference, time location setting, collaboration line centers, compute system, operation line centers, and perception. Right? Protection settings. Protection line calculation setting, perception location of program, set location of travel lines. Now inline interference comes in deviation line interference and calculation line interference and default communication lines into copy and paste. Enabled to enabled interact location setting into 24,000 line screens as location of its operation. Done by equation. All right. Direct lines of communication of panels, 1 million track lines, cerebral cortex lines of stream locations, operation surface locations, 3 panels of communication, 4 track line connections. Okay. Graphic calculation lines. Moon comes in. Moon is surfacing high position travel calculations. All right. So we have to understand what the moon is doing. 3 projection line screens and center positions to its flywheel direction and time sequence. Now, direct line calculation setting comes in all position to its orb lines. This is probing communication setting to your atoms and high calculation setting to your fractals and positions to pi. Direct lines of communication. Now, in direct line centers, it goes in seconds, minutes, and track locations of hours. Hours equals lines of 24,000 line set location, center position to its operation service applications. Calculation line interference is 1 million line rotation, center position locations, high centers. 3 zeros in track location, high centers. 3 line position, 3 line connections, 3 line rotations. 3, 6, and 9 calculation of box line rotation centers, the 3 waving patterns and track location. That my question. Okay. Going through the systematic line connection charge mechanism, high position of power over power over power. 3 line position calculation, 3 equals lines of power. Okay. Power direction of time sequence, power direction of timelines, and perceptions over pi, indirect signal and set locations. Pi direction calculation line interference at 3 set locations. Sets position location half pipe, sets position travel calculations. Point systems in a solar graph line connections of the travel direction of time sequence. Positions of pi, direction of timelines. Sets location. So the moon is surfacing indirect signals at location. Now in that direct signal line interference, the sun is on position location of track lines. Measure and position location of the platforms and position location of the portals. Direct lines of communication setting and center calculation stream into a new dome center and position to its location and a 4 generation screen lines of pod communication. Done by equation. Mechanism of high force, triangulation, reset position of programs. Argon line settings, high calculation line setting, rank graph screens, 1, 0 line positions, all triangulation, box lines, percentage communication, setting attraction. Okay. Direct calculations of percentage. So that's line calculation setting to 99 equals lines. That's 1 million line rotation centers and track locations and direct locations. And the 3 zeros of operation surface and triangle. Now, direct calculations of box line crosses line string. Triangulation crosses line string. Zero operation crosses line downstream. Sets position new operation surface at locations. Now, directing line communications and line connections hold levels of 2 panels and communications. Got calculation lines as high center interference and position location. Calculates high interference crosses line calculation setting up to its operation. Direct communication lines crosses line screens and clock line rotation setting in position to its operation. Done by equation. Okay. So panels of communication setting opens up cycles. Cycles are communication line streams. So we're setting the line position 9 equals lines of 1 and track locations. Right. That's in provision lines. We use 11 line calculation setting in position locations. Wait till we get in track lines of 0 line position of 9. Okay. Track lines of 9 line rotation center attraction. Right. Equal lines communication. What's above? Arrow indicated in line rotations north, west, south, and east and travel communication. Directing lines of signals. Sets lines XT1000, position location XT60,000 line. Sets travel calculations at all positions. 2 panels, 1 line rotation, center communications, 9 in-line sending connections. Direct calculation line interference, interweaving patterns. 1 position, 2 track lines, 3 line connections into solar graph line position, 9 over pi, 9 over sector, 9 calculation stream location of center. Direct calculation line interference is 0 communication, center lines of operation. Okay? Solar generation screens, direct calculation of lines of pi in 4 sets, 1, 2, 3, 4. Add line connections, 4 lines of 5, 5 lines of 7, 7 lines of communication of 12, 12 lines of 24, 24 lines of 48, 72, 144. Tracks communication line centers of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, track location of 1 setting. Sets operation service location system. When comes in traction, sets lines calculation high interference, high position location all levels, and track location. All right, sets calculation line interference. Solar graph calculations comes in 2 platforms of communication. Now, directing calculation line centers all over the high setting. 2 platforms of communication line centers. Dimensional line lock locations, cerebral cortex lines, and division location and patterns. Done by equation. Okay. Very complicated, guys, but very fun. All right. So formula equation comes in pi settings. Track to its communication center. Bracket communication lines, 0 operation, 0 operation, 0 operation, 0 operation, 0 operation. 1, 2, 3. Sets the position of error in points across the line streams. Directs lines of communication. Error lines indicate high position of programs. Center calculation, stream location, all line high position of its operation. Direct line communications, all line centers. Crossing line signals, galaxy line shift lines, and stream location at center. Cross line calculations, XT1000 comes in point system. Laser direct signals and position location centers of travel. Positions of point systems, point system, point system, point system. 3 track lines, 4, and position of center lines of 6, and position of 7 calculations. Direct calculation line interference and position of timestamp. Timestamp sets position of the box line center, position of travel. Calculation line interference, 0 gravity, 0 position, 0 travel calculation, solar sail. Sets position of the moon, sets position of the sun, sets position of the moon, sets position of the sun, and a 4-box location center of travel calculations. Done by equation. All right. Getting to modification line screen is where you understand how to set position all travel communication near settings of travel. Getting direct set location is your implants, a high position location of program line centers, and a 4-track locations. All right. So your pyramid set line calculation setting is line connecting, position of program locations, line connecting, and equal line communication of program settings. Line connecting and program communication of interline rotation setting and position of traction. Now, it gets complicated, right? Set a calculation of Fibonacci and direct signal. 3 lines of waves, track lines over cross line connections, direct line communication high interference, and position of the sun and track location. Directing lines of communication line interference into 2 panels communication of 1 center of operation. Very complicated stuff. 2 panels in cross line stream, okay? Direct signals, crossing line calculation setting into all levels Fibonacci to position location of the sun, crossing line signal. 0 operation, zigzags and line connection setting to 2 XT1000 streamlines and 3 set location of travels. Directing lines of communication, interference, and position location of its operation lines, new ground lines, new travel position locations, to Merkaba, set position, zero operation, and center calculation line setting of waving line cycles in position of track location. Done by equation. All right. So you have to really understand how this is all set up as location line settings of travel. Directing lines, calculation, setting, interference, a hieroglyphic location of channel communications, point systems, point system, point system, 4 calculation streamline conditions, 3 waving line settings, set locations, heat signature patterns, direct lines, calculation of lines, waving graph lines, 0, 0, and 2 positions of 1 track location of direction. X2000 comes in and travel calculation center lines, scans position locations into 1, 2, 3 panels of communication. Directs lines of pyramid lines, stream location of center. Sets location of Mother Earth, travel direction of time sequence, puts position of force recognition time settings into moon line centers in travel communication setting, to an open setting of open panel and position of alpha wave and travel calculation. Done by equation. Center communication lines, operation line screens. Directing lines of communication setting, all levels of high calculations. Now, directing lines of communication is really understand how to set position of the tone. Alpha calculation streamlines, delta communication interference, and omega line rotation center attraction. Okay. Directing line communication setting, all lines of calculation. All right. 3 indicates lines, 2 line track location, high setting. Operation service, X2000 position of 2 track locations. All right. And then we come into all calculation of waving line centers into XT 100,000 line screen and position location and setting. Platforms and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 line settings of traction. Direct lines of panels and cross and line communications of all calculation. Oh, solar flare, direct signals in the location grid. Directing lines of communications into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 panels of communication. Directing lines, cross lines, stream interference, and crop circle location center, position location, setting and traction. Direct communication location grids and 2, 3, 4 lines of provision. Sets position travel calculation of security lines, division high center position of track calculations. Center calculation lines is 0. Center calculation of balance lines is 0. Center calculation of high centers is 0. Set position of 4 track lines is 0. Set position location of 1 line rotation 1. Done by equation. Mechanism of a high force line travels, directing line signals and all calculation setting, position location time. Center calculation lines is space, and direct signal location of time, split the anomalies. Track location, high centers, high position location, hall levels, and position of travel calculations. Directing communication settings, all calculation. Now, 2 panel stream lines and high position of travel calculations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 8 line cross. See the 2 panels communication? Sets a triangulation reset. Okay. Sets cross lines and triangulation reset. Okay. Center calculation setting and Fibonacci line settings, all levels of double helix and line position of travel and phase direction of time sequence. Now, directing line positions across line strings, sets lines of box line rotation center and travel. Sets position location of 3 lines of box line rotation centers of communication. Now, directing lines of the sun comes in position of the moon. The moon sets position of travel calculation waiting on signal. Sets calculation line settings, all levels of operation system of pi, erection of time sequence, all calculation. Done by equation. Okay, so graph calculation setting and travels. Very complicated, right? Now, getting in the graphical line rotation center of child communication setting to the psychological reset position of programs, all calculation of moon line as an open panel and communications in 1 line rotation center of traction. Direct lines of communication, all levels high calculation. Sets position located force direction of time sequence. Now, in direct signals, we come into platitude division locations of 8 line centers of channels of communication. 2 platforms and 3 set location of settings. Sets position of the sun and the moon, protects the communication line settings, all levels of operation lines of face recognition. Done by equation. Okay. So this is all about understanding what is going on with your moon line rotation center to your frequency patterns. Direct lines of calculation settings alpha, sets locations into a delta box. TV section lines calculation of all calculations of 2 panels. 3 waving line signatures. Triangulation lines of box in position of star settings, high direction of time sequence, and 0 of operation decimal, position of 1, 1, 1 track, bracket communication, equal lines calculation setting, and program location center of travel. Done by equation. Mechanism high position and moon line center, center lines operations, surface and set locations. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels of communications, cross lines of 7 in position of 8. Sets cross lines of 8 in positions of 10. 10 lines streamlines calculation line centers of 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 7 sets lines of communication cross lines, application setting position, and center calculations. 3 lines of communication of centers and bracket calculation. Now, directing lines of communication line interference, you have to understand how to set position of the moon, its surface and location lines of seconds per line, sets calculation settings of portals, and all calculation of stargates of command centers and travel calculation. Now, directing line position of panels, calculation modifies. Center lines of communication finding the balance. Once it finds the balance position of travel calculation line centers, it then sets position location travel communication to its operation system location of travel settings, all through the moon setting. So we all understand how the moon works. It moves a formation line ground, sets position of portal communication, right? That's what it's doing right now through seconds, minutes, and hours into a 24,000 line screen in position location of 1 million screen. Sets line calculation frequency patterns. So the moon surface is a location system. For example, you got a 0 line, 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, 5 line, 6 line, 7 line, and 8 line communications, right? Your moon is here. So what your moon does is go through a triangulation reset positional point system. Calculation line settings crosses over and sets position travel calculations into pi calculation. Intelligence positional formation. Okay? Setting track lines is all about plateaus and positions of programs in a 3-set location. Directing line calculation settings of the sun has to come in position of program line centers as center of communication. Okay? Very powerful, right? Now, directing lines is 0 line calculation line interference. You have to know exactly how the moon sets up structures of its own design line conditions. Setting line communication 11 equals lines of 1 in track location, right? That's positional locations of line calculations. So we have 2 lines. We have 13 travels in position of 1 travel, right? So that's 13 over 1 over pi over calculation and directions. Panels of communication of 3 lines into 1 cycle and communication of travel communication. Now, directing lines of communication, very confusing. Your moon surfaces lines of triangulation point system travels into triangulation reset positions modulation. That's the moon setting in travel calculations. So every communication line screen sets the seconds, minutes, and hours. How fast your moon goes is your determination of correlation of light and how fast you set your system in triangulation reset position of programs of your emotional track interference. It sets position locations and all calculation line settings and all travel and communications to all calculation. Okay? All right, so you have to really understand the information cycles. So moon line, graph line, 1 set position operation, right? Decimal point 0.111, 3 lines, 4 track locations, 4 lines of provision above setting. Okay? So understand the 4 track locations, JIPs, in track location at 3 line center locations at 3 panels in 4 set locations. Okay? So we all understand how this sets position location in your systems because you have 4 generation screens and position location in your settings to your pod and communication. Calculation line interference and position of center calculation setting into 1 track location. Directing line calculation setting in position of 4 panels and position location of 4 over pi. That overcharges the mechanism high interference. That underscores the high calculation setting in position of 4 lines of 3 and set the travel calculations, right? In all traction. Okay? That's my equation. How are we all doing? How are you? Yeah, well, it is in position track lines, Chris. It's just location settings. And we get all seasons all in set location. 1 division line center, high position, its operation location. All right, so in that center line interference and all position on track through its communication structures and all division location system, you really have to understand how to use the foundation year 12. 12 lines equal line calculations of 24, 24 platforms of 48, sets position of 72, and calculation of 144 track location. Okay, so your moon is always in position, always in position, always, always, always. So the moon has to understand what you're doing through 12, what's correlating through 24, what's going through 48 frames, what's going through 72 track location, and what's going through 144 of a crystal line communication setting a track location. Okay? Look at that. Look how powerful it is. All 3 set connections, right? So this is what your moon is doing in all frames. Everybody's in a different frequency line calculation setting. So everything that is all set up to your moon lines and how position and travel calculated line in position is getting back into your memory lines and in position location to your inner child in center calculation setting to its operation location setting back into 0 of operation. Boom. Okay? So know exactly how fast you're going through acceleration line settings, all track location in your systems. Okay? So it's very powerful what the moon does through its own structure, its own design. But the graphic calculation line setting changes seconds and minutes in position location to your set lines. So the moon calculates high position location centers, right? Graph calculation lines are ring graph calculations, box line rotation centers of track communications, graph interference of 45-degree angles, 4 lines of calculation, and 3 lines of track location. Now, directing lines of communication lines calculation of the moon sets position of travel, sets position of travel, sets position of travel, sets position back to travel, in position of pi. Okay? Center calculation, XT1000 comes in. Center communication, point system, 1, 2, 3, 4 set locations. Brings position of travel, calculation line setting in position of operation. Okay? Setting position line calculation setting in all calculation. Okay? Done by equation. All right? So the mechanism high force line setting is really understand the travel direction of time, how it serves location in your systems. So it's all position locations where your moon comes in and creates its own dimensional sail, right? Set locations. So you're always working with the sun. The sun comes in track location. This is the sun in track location. The projection, right? The projector, the light force, the dark force. Okay. So you got a communication light anomaly and you got a dark anomaly. Okay. You got light tracks, you got dark tracks. You have to understand how to use the light communication setting, a reflection, high position of travel calculations. Setting position of the sun in all track location. All right. Comes in this directions and set position of light shades and shadows of calculation. Okay. So it's very complicated if you understand your time zones, sectors over vectors over pi, directing lines that communicate setting all travel calculation. Let's say you get 11 line channels, equal lines of 1. Okay. Here's the moon. I'm showing you exactly how you can use your moons now. Moon tracks lines at 2 panels in travel communications, right? Point systems and 2 travel. So your moon's going in 3 center calculations of pi, right? So your moon goes here, travels in center line, in position of point line, back in position. Calculation XT1000 goes into the center line, splits the anomalies in 4 track locations. Okay, 4 pieces of pi, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and set location diamond core setting and traction. Okay, so we all have to understand how to use the molecules, how it structures designs, and a point system of 4 track line connections of clocking is that definition. Okay, and so it's all mechanism high position of travel. Very powerful stuff in position of travel calculation setting. So you're always working with the sun, you always work on the moon in position location in the line calculation setting of projection, a set location. Okay, you're always working that setting. So it goes in and it goes out. It comes in and it goes out. It comes in and comes out. And set location. Okay, very powerful, right? All right. So once you understand the anomalies, switching line centers is understanding the connections of light codes. That surfaces line calculation setting into routers. The routers over pi directs lines calculation setting, equals lines of communication, triangulation, reset position, equal line calculation line centers, inference, and position location of 2 panels of coloration. Directing line calculation setting in 1 panel, 2 panels communication. Direct lines of the moon. Direct lines of the moon, it can vortex location in 3 settings. It doesn't need a travel direction. It can go through all single line communication. Position of point system, molecular structure lines. So your sun can go through anything through particle. Your sun can go through anything through modification. Same with your moon. Your moon is going through a calculation streamline and motion line track. But the position of the sun is the light code line stream interference that creates this high position location of its dimensional sail and set travel in position of program setting in position line calculation, your crop circles and set position of travel communications. All direct signal location. Okay. So very, very complicated stuff, guys, the equations. Formulas detect the high lines of grounds. Now the grounds has a rotation surface. It tracks its high position, its operation. Directing lines of solar sails and track location, right? That's how you see the moon. But this is the sun. And this is the moon, right? So you only see this, right? But what it is this. Okay, so the shadow lines comes in light shades and line centers in 3 set locations, right? Sets position of the moon of emotional line track lines and high calculations in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations. Travel direction comes into sun codes of communication light signals and high rotation light shades and shadows in position, location, and height calculation setting attraction. Okay. So there's a lot of things you have to understand how to surface location setting to understand how to use your moon line, because your moon is coming back to zero line rotation. Once it comes in coordination line settings, it comes in its own graphing calculation lines of circulation, rotation centers, all positions, its operation surface, and track location. Direct lines of communication of force, friction, and time sequence. Right? Panels and communication settings on all levels. Point system, point system, point system. Okay? Point system. Right? So 4 lines of center attraction. Okay? Direct lines of calculation setting in line location grids in position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attract lines as security measures and 3 set position of travel calculations. So we all understand how the calculations of the moon service your settings. Knowing exactly how fast it's going through your information panel. Now, information panel sets line communication of Jupiter in set location, right? 2 line streams in set location. That's Jupiter, right? Mercury has 1 line communication across lines of calculation string locations, right? So Neptune has a position location of door line center, has a shape position of a box line rotation center. Sets position of travel calculation line interference at 3 set location lines of triangulation reset position programs. Direct calculation line interference, a 3-point system, travel calculation settings position. Now, the line communication center has a calculation line stream. Direct communication of panels lines and pyramid line rotation. Pyramid line rotations and pyramid communication center travel. Okay? So remember, you're always working your astral projection settings and travel communications. Your geometry set location, your moon can change anything through its motion line track, but it has to be provisions that are going forward. You can't have spaces in between its location. Okay? So you're going here and you stop here, your moon's going to go back to the center of operation. Okay? It's got to go forward. It's got a cross line. So it has to be a full continuous line screen in position to its operation to get to its location. Okay? That's important understanding position of travel lines. That's what offlines your communication setting. Stop focusing emotional means to an end and you get to your point direction. Okay? All right, so so I'm showing you exactly what's going on now with your moon, how it's surfacing backwards and I'll calculate these line streams and also application settings, right? You can't add frames of interference in position to override program settings of traction because it sets lines of communication in your settings. So our cerebral cortex line setting is a dome center and track locations, right? Point system directions. Okay, it's dimensional doors. That's all it is. It's a hotel with a bunch of rooms. So each room has an indicate position of programs and direction, okay? So in that center calculation line interference, the moon and the position of the sun are in track location, right? So the center communication lines, lights codes, and position location dark line center to travel. Direct calculation of 3 lines of rotation 5, 6 lines of 7, set position 8, sets travel communication lines of 10, 11, and 12 set location setting their travel communication. So it's all about understanding what's going on through box centers and square roots. Square roots and position location sets lines of seconds, minutes, and hours of travel communications, right? So direct lines of seconds puts position lines of minutes and travel calculation settings at 2 operation centers. Hours are in position location of 2 operations, okay? Time sequence lines. So we take the 2 operations in the center calculation setting and point system traction. So that puts our location grid and platforms of communication setting to its holographic set location. Directing lines of the sun comes into high calculation line stream and direct signal to modification setting and projection and location center attraction. Okay, that way equation. All right. So it's very complicated what the sun and the moon do. All right. Because the thing is, you guys have to understand your memory comes in high calculation stream. Now that line rotation center, after the mole, in line rotation center is a location line interference, 2 million tracks through the team, and position location into 48,000 line calculated string lines and position of species line coordinations travels. Okay, so you have to understand the recognition and calculation line interference, where the moon is going in a 3-track location, and where the sun going is calculation line and it's a 3-line signals high position. Okay, very complicated stuff. Triangulation reset position programs and 3 lines of communication. All right, complicated because you have to understand the formulas of the equation comes from navigation of the line setting. But it's very complicated too because you have to understand the complication in position to its operation. Direct lines on one signature line screen, okay? Don't have faces in between, tracking of confusion, right? The moon has to surfaces where it needs to go in a true track locations or a 3-line rotation or a position of 4 lines or position of 5 lines or back and center position travel calculations. It has to run smoothly. It can't be spaces in between because it sets off calculation line centers to overdrive mechanism high position travel calculations. Sets all calculation line interference into interference in travel communication. Okay? Flowing record and time sequence, guys. So, how does everybody feel about that now? Okay, how powerful it is to really start to connect with your sun and your moon and track location of structure and design. Okay, know exactly what you're doing, enforcing recognition of time sequence through formulas of equation. If you get a center calculation line interference of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set locations, right? Again, it's calculated modified. 2 panels of communication, right? So 1 line signature, 2 tracks, okay? 3 line provisions, 4 line tracks, 5 line settings, right? This is all interline communication coming from my moon, a track location, high centers, all position locations with space recognition. Okay, so the moon sets up its own structure of its own design. Okay, because you become the moon. You don't see the moon. You're not the moon until you understand the moon. To understand the moon is to understand you through surface and triangulation and reset position of programs and calculation line settings of travel communication. See, directing line position of panels. Okay, very powerful, isn't it? But you have to understand what you're doing through center. You have to understand what you're doing through operation. And you certainly have to understand what you're doing through travel and mechanism high calculation setting of travel communication. Mega multi-pass. Okay. I know, Jess. Well, this is about you understanding how to balance out your transforming unit lines and your emotional track interference. You can't add emotion because it sets position of separation. Your moon can't travel. You understand that? So in position travel lines, it's got to be this. So you can do this, 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 this. It's fine, right? But it can't have spaces in between because the XT1000s comes in plateau. They fix it anyway. Don't worry about it. They clean the slate line communication setting to travel. They change the mechanism, high position location, light force, travel communication lines, calculation lines of projection, sets communication setting and travel calculation lines, setting track to its communication setting to its operation service back and track location. Okay? So you have to understand how everything is set up through your provisions, right? And cycles communications all levels. This interlines, intercommunicates, and intertwines. Wires of communication, lacing lines, crossing line signals. Okay? So inline rotation interference. So if you don't know what you're doing, XT1000s come in. They fix it. 3 lines of communications, right? Travel represent time sequence. Your moon is here in set locations, right? So in represent time sequence, communicate with the moon, travel calculation, 3 lines calculation, high interference, and position of programs, right? Direct calculations, moon travels here, point system, moon travels here, point system, moon travels here, point system, moon travels back here in set position, down through equation, okay? It's got to run smoothly, all through a graphing screen. Sets lines a laser line in communication, cross line, screen lines, and calculation. No space in between, okay? So get in that position to come in a galaxy shift line centers. A galaxy shift line center is an open sequence panel in communication setting to your position, location, and track lines of phase direction detection and eye calculation. Okay, intelligence. See the eye centers? Boom, right? So you're always in information of yourself, intelligence of face recognition. Okay, so you get a better understanding how important it is to use your moon now, right? I did a very powerful live communication setting where you actually saw the moon go by itself in a triangulation, right? Here's the grid, okay? Crossing line streams, high position location, high centers, high position operation, right? Moon was here, right? Then it went here, then it went here, okay? So it went into a triangulation, reset, position, and modulation all by itself. So that's what it is. Understanding the eye, it doesn't exist, which means that it's information where it hits by itself. So the moon moves by itself. It helps you to understand how to create a modulation center and a travel mechanism, line connections to your molecules, or anything through fractals, or anything through communication, or anything through chakras, or anything through calculation stream, high calculation setting of travel communication. Right? So now you understand the importance how to use the sun and the moon, especially when you go back in time as location travel settings. Sun comes in, moon line rotates its centers and protects its own system location of travel calculation. So it's about understanding more levels of view on what the moon surface is and what it does for you through projector. It's routing and routing and routing and routing, right? Router, routing. Okay, router. Everybody knows what a router is. And a router, right? It's the root. Okay, router, the root, right? Okay, into positions of levels of ramification. Okay, router, root, ram. Okay, so we all understand how to bypass. Now, bypassing is by locators, by locations, by divisions, by factors over pi, calculation line centers, circuit location system, a point direction location, omni highways, and track location line centers of travel. Point system, point system, point system, point system, point system, point system. Okay, moon is here. Okay, so the moon's already traveled through the triangulation setting. It's already traveled through the triangulation setting. It's already traveled through the triangulation setting done by equation. Okay, all through setting without separation. If you get separated from your moon line, your motion line track goes back to the beginning. You guys have to understand how this all works in motion line track lines, highest interference. It changes your cerebral cortex lines of design in structure its calculations. You have high calculation lines, a high position travel. So getting into that position location high centers, high position calculation system puts everything in tractions. You want to be a smooth line triangulation, right? Not a cross line signals of separation. Okay, so here's position location of the moon. Here's position location of the moon, right? This moon will not travel in position. It will stay there until you get back in line signature. And then it will travel to its location. And then it comes into high text. Okay? So it's all about understanding how to use the, just not just the RAM, the acceleration or anything mocking, but understanding point system. See, this is easy because it's already traveled through a set location of 3 settings of travel. And then you can go back here, it can go up here, it can cross over here, it can travel through this line connections, go through this universe, go into that universe, go through line cross location in different galaxies. So you have to understand how to use the solar sail, a set position of operation, your settings. There's the solar sail in track location. Division line calculation, string location, high center position of its operation. Okay? It's light, shades, and shadows, guys. That's all it is. So once you understand how to use this in all ways and forms, everything comes back in formation, right? It's important you understand. Do not focus just on this. Okay? You want to focus on everything of this in set locations. And this in set locations, right? Not this, not this, this. Because the moon goes from here to here, right? Which is pi in set location. Okay? The X2000 comes in, sees what you've done, scans position, center operation. Picks up the structure of its design in position and takes it in the line communications back to its program set location. Okay? And then distributes it back through the sun to the moon. Okay? You already know the sun's a portal, so is the moon. Everything's a portal. Everything's communication of a portal. So once you understand that, then you understand the positions of your runways. Okay? And then you understand your position locations of your wall connectors. And then you understand your towers of communication. Towers of communication. Okay? All set through design. All right? See? Solar flare confirmation. So we all understand when I get in perspective, it's all about understanding a road graph calculation stream locations. All right? 2 sides, calculation lines of center communication. Right? Eyes looking in, eyes looking out. Okay? All through calculation line. The sun and the moon comes in track locations. Remember, guys, the sun and the moon comes to you through all levels of outer space in position of inner space location of travel. Okay? So you have to understand when you see in the sun and the moon, it's attracting your system to all calculations. It's what you do through intent, changes everything through frame. Okay? In box location. Okay? In box location. See the boxes? Then you come into security line and set location. Okay? So it's taking things out of the equation. So the XT1000 picks it up, platitudes of division, picks up the platforms, and brings it back into set location. Okay? So it's important you understand how this all works now, how to travel through the mind through navigations of your moon. Because your moon is going to keep going back and center communication setting once it understands to set locations back into zero of operation. One line signature of yin and yang. Okay? Which is what? A figure 8. Hoo-ah, we're done. Okay? That's it. That's all it is. That's all you're coming back into. One signature into a figure 8 location. So, how does that feel? Truly understand how to use the moon now, right? Because what's happening right now, the correlations of the panels and direct signals to your number sequence patterns and position of your quantum self is changing communications back and force line calculation setting to the intercept location system of travel recognition, of time sequence. Now that puts all line positions and their settings back into zero operation, one line signature in 8 line conditions, back in division. Okay? Full router communication. Grounds powers in the atmosphere. Okay? Better travel going forward in all position, location, and settings. Always going forward. Never going back. Never going back. Always going forward, 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 forward. Always going forward. Okay? So once you get in that position, it comes into all calculation lines out of separation. The calculation line interference comes in your thought pattern. The thought pattern comes in its stealth location of its formation line screen. That's say locations and position locations over. Okay? Over. Okay? In position of pi. Over pi. Okay? All right, we're done. Hope you guys had fun. I'm just giving you guys a better understanding to really understand how to direct your system locations, how to use your moon. Right? Because it's all moonline communication, multiple line track interference. You got to get balanced communication in your males and female polarities and position locations, the box triangle, and triangle box location is center of operation. Okay? See you in 5. Adios.